Locals have a nickname for this area. They call it, wait for it, Aventura. Because depending on the time of the day, it can either take you 10 minutes or 45 minutes just to reach I-95 from downtown. And anyone who has lived around here already knows exactly why. You have school zones that slow everything down in the morning and in the afternoon, and you have a few key roads handling a lot of traffic. And when rush hour hits, everything stacks up. That's just the reality of this pocket between Aventura and North Miami Beach. But here's the interesting part. This community sits right off of I-95, which means if you're coming from the highway, you're basically making just one right turn and you're here. That convenience is actually one of the reasons developers started looking at this area more seriously in the last few years. Because location-wise, you're minutes from Aventura's downtown and minutes from Aventura's mall and still extremely connected to the rest of Miami-Dade and Broward through I-95. So even though locals joke about the traffic sometimes, from a development perspective, this location actually makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about what's actually being built here, because this is an extension of an older community that already exists.
This is not a completely new standalone development. It's in fact an extension of the existing Greenview at Presidential community, which tells you something important. Developers usually do not keep expanding unless they believe the location and the product still make sense. So this is really a continuation of that same vision with just newer inventory.
You're not going to be finding here townhouses, and you're not going to be finding here villas. It's not a dense multifamily. These are single-family homes, and that's an important detail.
And within that single-family category, one of the things Lennar is introducing here is what they call the next-gen layout, which is a separate living space inside the home with its own entrance, kitchen, living area, bedroom, and bathroom. So it's not just an extra room. It's a second independent section built into the house. And that matters because it changes the type of buyer this product attracts. This is built for multi-generational living, long-term guests, or households that want some separation without leaving the home. For some buyers, that means keeping family close without giving up privacy. So this is a very specific use case, and it feels intentional.
Every home here comes with a private pool, which is something buyers in South Florida increasingly expect, especially in newer communities. The homes themselves are also fairly generous in size. The smaller models start a little over 2,000 square feet under air, and the larger homes go significantly beyond that. So these are not tiny starter homes. They're designed for buyers who want new construction, space, and modern layouts in a location that still connects easily to the rest of the city.
And another thing that fits that buyer profile is that these homes are delivered fully finished, which means flooring, appliances, smart home features are all included. This builder tends to standardize the product, which makes the buying process easier because you're not spending months making design decisions. At the same time, it also means less variation from one home to another inside the community.
But what's really interesting about this project isn't the homes, it's the area around it.
And part of that story starts with the land itself. This sits on a former golf course, which helps explain why the setting feels more open and less dense than a lot of typical Miami infill.
Because this entire corridor, known historically as Rolling Green, has been going through a quiet transformation. For decades, much of this neighborhood was made up of older homes built in the 50s and 60s, larger lots with a lot of underutilized land and housing stock that hadn't been significantly updated. For a long time, developers ignored the area, but eventually something happens in cities like Miami, where nearby areas become expensive and saturated, and developers start looking at close neighborhoods with land and potential, and that's exactly how everything started happening here. Little by little, parcels began changing hands, and older homes were purchased, land was assembled, zoning opportunities were studied, and now we're starting to see new construction communities appear in pockets like this one, which is why developments like this are popping up now. Developers are essentially looking at this corridor and saying, the location works, the land exists, and the demand for new homes in South Florida is still very strong. So instead of building another condo tower, they're building new single-family inventory, and that's actually relatively rare right now in Miami-Dade. Most of the time when you see new developments in these parts of the county, it's condos or townhouses. Large single-family communities with modern homes are much less common. And that's part of what makes projects like this interesting to watch. Because when developers start investing in new construction in older neighborhoods, it usually signals a shift in how the area is evolving. Now, that doesn't mean everything changes overnight. Neighborhood transformation take years and sometimes decades. But these projects are often the visible signs that something is starting to move. And buyers who understand real estate cycles tend to pay attention to those signals. Some people look at the traffic and think this area is very complicated. Others look at the same map and think this is 5 minutes from Aventura right off of 95. Two completely different perspectives, but that's often how real estate works. The same location can look different depending on what lenses you're using. So if you're looking at this area for the first time, it's worth understanding both sides. Yes, the traffic nickname exists for a reason, but there's also a reason builders are investing here. And right now, developers clearly see enough potential here to start building communities like this one.
And with that, this community is also being positioned as a more controlled residential environment. It's fully gated with 24/7 security, so this is not an open neighborhood where everything feels loose or unpredictable. And for a lot of buyers, especially families, that structure is part of the value. And that's also where the HOA becomes part of the conversation, because it's run roughly between $1,600 to $1,700 per month and covers things like security, landscaping, amenities, and internet. So part of what you're paying for, it's convenience and consistency. But it's still a fixed carrying cost, and buyers need to look at it that way.
And when you start seeing new single-family construction appear in an older pocket, that's usually not random. It's developers making a bet on what this neighborhood could become over time. Homes here start at about $2 million, and they have no CDD.
So at this point, you're not just evaluating a house, you're evaluating a whole system. New construction, controlled surroundings, standardized product, and a location that is still evolving. And that's why this community is going to appeal to some buyers much more than the others, because in the end, the choice here is less about good or bad and more about what kind of lifestyle structure you want.
If you want to preview any of these homes or talk about the neighborhood and its surroundings, I am here to help you. My name is Anca Maria, and I would love to meet you.